Welcome to another episode, Pound for Pound Boxing Report. Our first episode of 2020. After taking the last couple of weeks off to observe the holidays, I hope everyone had a good holidays and I hope everyone having a good new year. We're back. I'm your host, Michael. Joining me this week is Gail from Communities Digital News. What's going on, Gail?
Hey, I can't believe it's our first show of the 2020. It's our first show of the decade, not just the year.
Yeah.
Happy New Year, all of you boxing heads.
Indeed. For those who are new to Pound for Pound Boxing Report, Pound for Pound Boxing Report live YouTube show, podcast, as well as blog, discussing all things boxing. The motto is when boxing is good, we will talk about it. When it's bad, we will talk about it. The bottom line is, if it concerns the sweet science, we will talk about it. If you want to find out any and all information about Pound for Pound Boxing Report, the blog page is the place to go to. p4pboxreport.wordpress.com is the link. If you follow the blog and you hadn't seen anything, or if you follow us on iTunes and Spotify and Google Play Music, I'm going through some changes behind the scene. Haven't posted any episodes in a bit. Going through a new format, changing the RSS feed and all that stuff. You won't see us on SoundCloud. Not for the time being. I will say that. Not for the time being. I'm not going to say any more, but not for the time being. But you will still see us on iTunes, Spotify, Google Play Music, Google Podcasts, and all those matters. But to reiterate, if you want to find out all information, go to the blog page. You check the top right of the blog page. You'll find links to where to find us on social media, where to find us on all RSS feeds that carry podcast format. Links to where you can donate to the show. We got a Cash Me and PayPal link. Let donation be the best nation to start off the new year. And also links to my online fitness page. I am an online coach for Beachbody.com. Hadn't done any fitness challenges because I'm just getting over a bit of a cold spell. I've been under the weather for the past week or so. I'm just getting back into form. But hey, let's build together. 2020 challenge is coming. I'm hoping to get Gail on for 2020. If you're interested in any fitness challenges or any programs on Beachbody, like the 6 weeks of the work, which is really popular, a new workout program that's fresh out the cut over on Beachbody, like the P90X series, like the Insanity series, Pio and whatnot. Or if you're interested in Shakeology or any of the challenge packs, just hit me up on my online link, my online coaching page link on Pound for Pound Box Report, or you can hit me up on Twitter, Brother JR at Brother JR76. Let's get things going. Kind of doing a recap of boxing really over the past couple of weeks, I should say. Let's start with the ladies. The name of this particular episode is GWOAT Making History, and we will start with the self-proclaimed GWOAT, that is Claressa Shields, undisputed unified middleweight champion. She moved down last weekend. Well, last weekend to fight Ivana Habazin, moving down to 154 pounds to fight for the vacant titles, WBO version of the titles. She dominated Habazin, won every round, won every second. In round two, a dominant unanimous decision win. I'll go to you, Gail. Shields, she started off at super middleweight. She moved down to unify and become undisputed champion at middleweight, and now she's down to 154. I was personally surprised that even though she moved down, I thought she would pack on a lot of weight, but she really didn't. She only gained 4.5 pounds from weigh into the time she entered the ring, but she still seemed comfortable in there. She didn't seem sluggish or anything like that. Looked good at the weight. Your reaction to the fight, your reaction to her performance at 154 pounds, and moving forward, do you think that she will keep this weight at 154 pounds, or do you think she just wanted to come to go down to make history, and she'll eventually move back up to 160?
Well, first of all, you were not exaggerating when you said she won every second of that fight. She literally won every darn second of that fight. Never mind the fact that apparently 2 of the judges aren't real good at math, because for the 10-round fight with a knockdown from a body shot, which was extremely impressive, and to me, by far the most impressive skill I witnessed from Shields in the night, and she was delighted that she managed to do that. So with a single knockdown, winning all 10 rounds, that scorecard should have been 100-89, except that we had a 100-90 card, I believe, and we had a 99-89 card. 2 of the cards were so messed up, but should have been, if the math was done right, 3 shutout 100-89 cards, and it really was that dominating. We have waited for this fight since last April. First time the fight was scheduled, the postponement was due to an injury to Shields. Then it was scheduled again in August. We had that really nasty dust-up prior to the weigh-in between the 2 camps, in which Shields' brother, Artis Mack, is alleged to have assaulted Habazin's trainer, James Ali Bashir. Just an ugly, ugly incident. That is being handled by the legal system. We're not going to talk about that part, but it finally got made last Friday. And, in a way, it was slightly disappointing because it was such a beatdown. Habazin had every reason to bring it, a little revenge, get a little justice in the ring on behalf of her trainer, which had to be very upsetting for her, but she just could not muster a whole lot. So here we have Shields now, who has won 3 divisions titles, going down in weight. That is very unusual. Mostly when you've seen men do it, they move up. You see somebody start at especially the smaller weight divisions, they can move up over the years, over a decade, pretty swiftly, because the differences are only 3 pounds, and then 4 pounds, and then 5. And you can pretty quickly sprint through 3 or 4 weight divisions if you started as a young man, either side of 20. Instead, your Shields is in her mid-20s, moving down in weight. That's very impressive. That speaks to her training and her work ethic. She looked great at 154. I mean, it's really hard to imagine that she fought at 168. Really amazing. And there is a reason she needs to do this. There is so little quality competition for her up at super middleweight, up at middleweight. She needs to come down in weight to start having enough competitors to face her. She's just starting to run out of opposition is the problem. Her opponent, another opponent in a fight we'll talk about, Alexandra Jimenez of Mexico, she started at heavyweight. She's come all the way down to super middleweight exactly for the same reason. You're not going to have a lot of women in the bigger weight divisions. I mean, physically, there's just not the likelihood where they're fit and in shape that they're going to weigh 160 pounds unless they're 6.5 feet tall. That's just not going to happen. Shields is looking down toward big names like Katie Taylor, like Delphine Persoon, like Cecilia Brækhus, who's pretty much the acknowledged #1 pound-for-pound fighter up to this point in women's boxing history. Of course, Shields wants to take that unofficial moniker away from her, and she'd also love to hand Brækhus her first defeat. Brækhus is 37 years old. I don't think she's going to be fighting all that much longer. So this is Shields' opportunity to see how she does, dropping in weight. Brækhus will need to come up a little bit. Some of the other ladies will need to come up a little bit to meet her. But the potential of meeting her at 154 or 147 is a lot greater. It would be all but impossible to make fights like that for her at 160 and 168. So this was a very smart thing for her to do. It's an accomplishment. She looked good in the ring. She admits that her big problem is that when she gets excited about the potential for a knockout, she starts to flail a little bit. The punches aren't crisp, and she needs to calm herself down. And the good news is she knows that. She acknowledged that in the post-fight interview. So that's something she'll go back to the gym and work on. Due credit to her trainer, John David Jackson. He has done a terrific job with her, shoring up some of the fundamentals that we're starting to see with her footwork, her punch selection. I mean, she is starting to do some really nice body work. That is going to take her a long way.
I want to give us first of all a shout out to Lisa Bells. I hope you had a good holiday, Lisa, and I hope having a good year. And need to get you back on the show sometime. Whenever you're ready, just hit me up. She's giving some commentary in the live YouTube chat. She said it wasn't competitive at all. Just been saying what up to you, Gail.
Thank you. Yeah, wasn't it disappointing? I mean, I really wanted to see those ladies go to war, especially because of all the stuff outside the ring. And just, Habazin just didn't have it. Just didn't have
it. You talk about future opponents here. Potential opponents within the fights we're going to talk about, we're going to recap this evening. I'm going to recap quite a few ladies' bouts on the undercard of Shields and Habazin. Let me say beforehand, the Shields card took place in Atlantic City. On the undercard, you had a very entertaining bout at super middleweight, where Shields first won her world titles. Unification bout, WBA, IBF version between Alicia Napoleon-Espinosa, who I believe was correct me if I'm wrong, she was the WBA champion, Gail?
Yes, that's correct.
Fighting by the name Cederroos from Sweden. Highly competitive bout, very entertaining bout. Cederroos, was the underdog coming in, but you could tell early on that she may have been the quote unquote underdog, but she was a very live underdog. Tall for the division, 5'10 and a half, 5'11, 5-inch advantage in height over Espinosa, and she used that height and that reach from jump. For her first appearance in the U.S., I haven't seen much of her before. She surprised me with her. It wasn't just her height and her reach, Gail. It was the application of her height and reach, and doing it with a high level of skill. She put down Napoleon round 2 with the left hook. She kept connecting with that left hook all night long. She got the jab going early. She kept the jab going throughout. Did an excellent job of countering, not just with the left hook, but with the right hand. Napoleon, she had her moments throughout at spots, but in the end, overall, Gail, I thought Cederroos, she got the decision win by unanimous decision. I thought it was a more than fair decision. Highly entertaining fight, and be it middleweight or super middleweight, dare I say, we have a new lady upon the scene.
Well, we do, sort of. Now, Cederroos had a great performance. For me, honestly, this was the fight of the weekend. It was surprisingly competitive, action-packed. Both ladies brought it. There was nobody holding back in the ring, that's for sure. But Cederroos fought to her height. She fought tall. There are a lot of men who could watch that fight and learn a thing or two about how you use your height and the reach advantage to work at distance, but to still jab with power and follow up when you get pay dirt. And she did every time. Napoleon-Espinosa had a lot of trouble getting close to her, but it was still an action-packed fight. It wasn't in a phone booth all the time, because Cederroos was smart enough to get out, come back in, get out, come back in, engage, get out. And she kept making the point. She did score the knockdown, and bloody. Both women were bloody by the time the fight was over, and that was a good thing.
They were both a bloody mess.
Yeah, Napoleon-Espinosa had a cut. Cederroos had a pretty good bloody nose, but man, they kept on coming, and it was not a close decision. It was, no worries about a robbery. I did think Cederroos' comments afterward were refreshing because, of course, the winner of this fight, who was expected to be Napoleon-Espinosa, was being teed up for Claressa Shields, again, assuming that she won her fight. Well, didn't turn out to be Napoleon-Espinosa. So when they asked Cederroos about it, she said, no, I'm not ready for her. Not a chance. No, I'm going back to Sweden right now. Good for her. She wants to work a little more before she takes on Shields. That's a smart thing for her to do. This was her first fight in the United States. We're all going to remember her. She can easily have a couple more fights this year in Europe and then see what happens. And maybe if a Bracus Shields fight is made, Cederroos gets on the undercard, especially if this fight is done in Europe where those ladies could fill a large arena and put 15,000 people in the seats. That'd be a very smart thing for her to do. She's only been a professional since 2017. And as I said, this was her first fight in the United States. All the rest have been in Europe. So she's smart to slow things down a little, but it does leave Shields sort of high and dry right now. But as we'll figure as we talk about another ladies' fight that happened last weekend, we have maybe some more potential for Shields. And there's another alternative for Shields, which we can talk about after we finish our review.
Yeah, indeed. I want to give a shout out to Gus, aka Corruption in Boxing, DSK Kennels. Gus, if you want to be on the show, brother, just let me know here in the chat, and I'll shoot you the link via Skype. Lisa also said in the chat in response to that Cederroos Napoleon bout that the check hook from Cederroos was sweet. It sure was.
Oh,
that's how she caught her. That's how she put her down, and she kept up with that punch all night long. Yep. That was a Roy Jones-esque type of check hook. It makes me wonder if she watched a film of Prime Roy Jones growing up.
Wouldn't that be a fun question to ask her? And if she's on social media, we'll have to go dig around and see if she owns up to that. Very, very, very possible. So thank you for mentioning that, Lisa. Yeah, and with that snappy jab that she's got, which she can deliver safely at range because she's so tall for the division, she can disarm an opponent, sort of stun them a little bit with that jab in the face, and suddenly she's got an opening to go to the body. And she absolutely did.
I see, Gus, you wasn't able to watch any of the fights last week. I'm going to ask you a question, an open question in the chat, and you can respond in the chat. If you were able to watch the triple header, put it this, no, here's a question, Gus. Not going to talk about this in the news, but I'm going to ask you here right now. I don't know if you know, Gus, but a favorite fighter of ours, Kosei Tanaka, he was placed by the WBO as a super champion in that division. I think it opened up the possibility, Gus, for him to fight, not just to unify at 112, but to move up to 115 and be #1 contender for Ioka without him losing the belt. Just comment in the chat, if you will, your thoughts on that. While we move on and talk about these other fights. We'll go from Cederroos, who fought a very smart, a very intelligent fight, Gail, to a fighter who I think continues to fight very, very dumb. And that is one Jesse Hart, as he fought Joseph Jr., fight that took place on ESPN. Smith winning by decision. Hurt him early in that bout. Second round, I believe Smith did put him down in round 7. Hart was lucky to survive. He was lucky to go the distance. The frustrating thing is for me, watching Jesse Hart fights. He talks a good game, but he doesn't live up to his mouth. Um, Joe Smith Jr. He's a good fighter. I think he's better than a lot of people think. A lot of people give him credit for. Yes, he can punch. We know he can punch, but he has some decent amount of skills. But to me, this fight proves that Jesse Hart, he's always going to be a guy who falls short, in part because he doesn't use his brain when he fights. Your reaction to what you saw?
I agree with you about Joe Smith Jr. You know, we have to think back to when he sort of burst onto the scene as a journeyman, part-time fighter out of Long Island, working days, doing construction, digging trenches, which, as we've also seen from Andrew Cancio, who more or less does the same thing in California for the gas company out here. You dig trenches all day, you are hella strong. You're just hella strong. And he came out of nowhere with some blistering knockout wins, burst onto the scene, sent Bernard Hopkins to retirement. Bernard Hopkins, crazy. And then suffered, a loss, had to kind of regroup himself. But what I have seen is that in addition to just raw power, he has started to develop the more finite skills, the ring generalship, the pacing, knowing that he can go all 10 or 12 rounds if he needs to. And he doesn't have to score the one big blow. He can just pound on a guy forever. And that's what he did with Jesse Hart. And yeah, how disappointing is it when you know, because you've seen it, that there's skill and there's potential there with Hart, and it's like a mirage. You see it, you go head for it, and then suddenly it's gone. You think, where the hell did it go? Yeah, we expected this fight to be so much more competitive. And, in a way, a lot like the Shields Habazin fight. It seemed like it was going to be a 50-50 fight, and it just didn't happen that way. And honestly, I don't know why there was any point to him continuing to the bell, really. Although one judge gave him the fight on the scorecards. That's right up there with Adelaide Bird, and CJ Ross. So
yeah, I saw that. I was commenting with the fellas from Three Kings Boxing. We was all like, what?
Yeah, the hell? I mean, this was a relatively inexperienced New Jersey judge who had never judged a fight at that level. And, everyone can make a mistake, and that needs to be his one and only mistake. He needs to go back for more training. He needs to get some more hours in on some lower level fights. I mean, sometimes it really is just a more green judge, inexperienced judge is given an opportunity to judge, a fight a little above the skills he's used to seeing, to see, how does he do? Does he handle it? Is he someone we can sort of move up the ranks in our judging corps, in our state commission? No. That would be hell no. He needs to go back to school. It didn't end up hurting the fight. That's why there are 3 judges, but there is no way that Joe Smith won a majority decision over Jesse Hart.
And indeed, DS Kennels 210 said the Top Rank has been very good to Hart, put him in multiple positions to win a title, and never got nowhere to hump. I guess he's Top Rank version about Do Jack. You could argue that. The problem is that, and the reason I say Hart is stupid, not just because of his fight, because of the decision making. Gilberto Ramirez moves up to 175 pounds, leaving that WBO title vacant. Hart could have made a decision to stay at 168 and fight for the vacant belt against a guy, I can't pronounce his name right now, who would have been less dangerous than a Joe Smith. But no, he moves up, wants to win, wants to has this thing in his head that he wants to fight Ramirez and beat Ramirez. Bruh, you lost to him twice. You're not gonna beat him a third time. Stay in the division, stay
Yeah.
at 168 and win a world title there. No, you act dumb and move up to 175, and now you got beat. Where are you at now?
He's a man without a country. He's a man without a division, really. I mean, he is, I don't know that he's even gatekeeper material. I will say this: Top Rank is very, very loyal. If they can find a way for him to be useful, if he's a guy that puts butts in seats, he'll get more fights. But he won't be the guy out of this bout moving up, looking at the guys up above him in that very, very talent-laden light heavyweight division. Because now Joe Smith is that guy who is the test between title fights for some of the bigger names, who are starting to run out of guys to fight because they've all sort of done the round robin fighting each other. So we'll see where Joe Smith goes, but we may see where he goes after tomorrow night's main event in the light heavyweight division.
And Gus has answered my question that I asked him about Tanaka. He says, strategically, I'm going off on a bit of a side tangent here, kind of getting nerdy between Gus and I because we talk smaller weight fighters often, both on air and off air. So I wanted to I was really interested in his commentary. He says, strategically done by the WBO, put him in an all Japanese super fight with the great Ioka. He also says, on the one hand, the dream unification super fight with Julio Cesar Martinez at 112 would be bypassed. Such a shame, and such a shame in the short-term future. They may meet at 115 at a 221 at 2021. Excuse me. Ultimately, Gus, I agree with you. I agree with you on the first point, and kind of on the second point. The bottom line for me is that. Smart by all parties, smart on the part of Team Tanaka because they petitioned to be named to have Tanaka named as a quote unquote super champion by the WBO, and smart on the part of WBO because it keeps Tanaka in the fold, who's one of the best fighters in the lower weight divisions. He could fight unification if he should he stay at 12 pounds this year, or as I said earlier, when he eventually moves up to fight Kazuta Ioka, who's a WBO champion at 115 pounds, that move means that Tanaka will be a number one contender. So he wouldn't have to. It would make it easier for him to get that fight, but ultimately it frees Tanaka up to make a variety of moves to basically do whatever he wants at 112 or 115 pounds. Let's get back on the docket here. I'm going to try to speed through this show because there is a Showtime card this evening during the recording of this show. Gail and I trying to get to that. Let's go back to the ladies. Arguably the most talked about fight of the weekend. If Claressa Shields was the kind of showcase, if Cederroos and Napoleon-Espinosa been the best fight of the weekend, Franchon Cruz, her first title defense of the BCBO belt against Alejandra Jimenez was the most talked about during and after Gail. Jimenez was the underdog, but she was a live underdog as she was some backstory here. She was a heavyweight who fought as 230 pounds, moving all the way, has worked her way all the way down to 168 to fight Cruz. And from early on, you could tell that the imposing size of Jimenez was going to play a role. She really made Dezurn, who has a reputation for being bigger and stronger than most at her weight. She literally and figuratively made Crews-Dezurn the smaller fighter. Cruz was not used to working that hard so early in the fight. Even though she was landing punches, it was like she was working twice as hard to land equal amount of punches against a Santiago who kind of bullied her in this fight, Gail. Um, Funny moment as late in the fight, um, the hairpiece of Crews-Dezurn uh, started to come out. They had to stop it to put it back in the corner. Hunter basically said, "Take it off, take it off." It made for a terrific meme. Santiago won. I think she won fair, and I think she deserved the decision. Uh, Talk about the fight itself and how it went. And while we're here, might as well touch into it. Talk about some of the controversy that has arose after the fight. Crews-Dezurn has taken the loss very well, I may say, but in the days after, she did tweet that there was some, I'm paraphrasing here, some funky stuff that went on during that fight in which she will give some detail in the upcoming days. There have been some other fighters because of Santiago and her imposing size and her physique have questioned whether she's a clean fighter. You even had some questioning her anatomy. So I know I'm putting a lot on the table for you, but the fight, uh, opine about give your opinion about the fight, how it went, and the controversy. A lot of the scuttlebutt and the talk about Santiago that has happened in the days following her win, her upset win.
This is another example of the problem that the very top talents have in the women's higher weight divisions is just so much of, there really is a lack of quality opposition because of the numbers. It's a numbers game. The women simply don't have a lot of other women in those weight divisions. Now, Cruz, this was actually her third defense of the title. She did a rematch with the woman who she won the title against, although it was a vacant title at the time, Maricela Cornejo, and won the rematch. She had a TKO win over Kayla Williams earlier last year. And then, once again, here you have a super middleweight. There are only 22 women's professional super middleweight in the entire world. 22. That's it. Franchon has fought 6 of them. So he's starting to run out. So Alejandra Jimenez, similar problem. She won a title of the WBC women's heavyweight title in 2015. How many women's heavyweights are there? You ask how many women's heavyweights there are. There's something like 8. So she had to come down in weight, similar to what we just talked about with Claressa Shields, that she is looking for the top quality opposition. Even as she started at super middleweight, she's had to come down from there as she sort of, bowled through the division. So here we have Jimenez, somewhat doing the same thing with Crews-Dezurn, came down in weight. She did drop all the way from heavyweight at one time. Her last heavyweight title fight, like I believe, was in 2017. She's had several fights since then, and I'm going to check to just confirm that they were in fact at super middleweight, and the last few have been. She's been dropping. So here they were matched up. But just like with Cederroos being much taller than Napoleon-Espinosa, just as you see, these women fighting each other, moving around in weight divisions, you have a woman who's just naturally a lot bigger. And that's what happened. Alejandra Jimenez is a very tall, very big woman at 5'11", almost 6 feet tall, who did did all right carrying a lot of weight at heavyweight, trimmed down enough to fight at 168 at 5'11". She
was a former WBC champion at heavyweight.
Absolutely was, yeah, which is, pretty amazing. But again, you could put, all of the women in the professional heavyweight ranks around the world at a single dinner table. So what does she do? So to her credit, at age 32, brought herself down in weight for her last few fights and then got this opportunity against the reigning title holder and with the WBO super middleweight title available as well. And it was a very rough, very rugged fight. They brought it. Crews-Dezurn is a very physical fighter. I think she's watched a whole lot of video of Bernard Hopkins because, honey, she knows every trick in the book. She has a hard-working forearm, I'll just say that. And they mixed it up. So it was a good brawl, but for probably the first time in her professional career, Crews-Dezurn was looking at a woman bigger than she was, a lot bigger than she was. Was it a smart idea to take the fight? Well, give her credit. She didn't say no. She wasn't gonna come up with an excuse why, I don't know if I really want to fight this big gal. And she did lose, and unfortunately had an incident in the corner. We were talking about this before the fight off the air. We'll talk just briefly here for a second. There are very specific rules for women fighters in particular about how they are to secure their hair. It's got to be, even more than the men, really secured down. And if your hair is short enough that it's hard to pin down to your head, you're having trouble just braiding it, it's often a lot easier to just have a weave in place and braid it down. Unfortunately, it came loose during the fight because it was so damn rough. Well, Crews-Dezurn would not have been allowed back in the ring with it not tight to her head, just like a fighter can't go back in with tape hanging off their gloves. So her trainer, she was trying to push it back into place, and her trainer was like, no. We got to deal with that. And the only way to really deal with it was to yank it off her head, which couldn't have been a lot of fun. But God bless her. She carried on. She did her best. She lost a majority decision. It was a very close fight. And, I give her all the credit in the world. I know, happened to, this full disclaimer, I know her quite well personally. She had a good laugh at herself afterward for that incident. Said she lost fair and square. It is not the end. It's just a learning, just one more lesson on the road, and she'll be back. And she absolutely will be back. She's a draw. She's got a great social media following. She's a great role model. She's in the midst of finishing her college degree. She has a fashion design business on the side. In fact, she has designed a lot of the women professionals' ring gear, including for Claressa Shields, a previous opponent. And so here we are. Now the controversy. Anyone who watched the fight, anyone who heard her do an interview, had to be sort of taken aback because Alejandra has an incredibly deep voice, and a very short, mannish haircut, right? So you look at her, you listen to her, and you think to yourself, wow, that does not conform to the gender standards that I'm used to as identifying somebody as a woman. So a lot of talk, a lot of gossip got going. Well, she had to be a man. Oh, a woman that big, beat up Franchon, beat up the champion, had to be it. She's really a man. So a lot of that stuff gets started on Twitter, and boxing Twitter goes crazy. And, it was, for a lot of folks, I think, a little bit confusing. Now let's take a look at the facts of this. First of all, the woman, she has given birth to a daughter. She has a daughter who's I believe, 10 years old. So if at the very least we know Ms. Jimenez was born enough of a woman to give birth. So she had the physical equipment to give birth. She's been a professional boxer for 5 years. She went through full VADA testing for this fight. She passed the test. I'm not sure what more you can ask. However, is she gender fluid? Is she transitioning? Well, apparently not to the point that she's out of the women's weight division. Maybe it's not on purpose. We're learning a lot. We're educating ourselves that gender is not binary, is not one side of the fence or the other side of the fence, and they never meet in the middle. It can be a bit of a sliding scale. Chemically, biologically, who knows? There are women athletes who will have an advantage because their hormone mixed up by nature in their DNA, it's a little higher than the average woman.
The controversy, it reminds me of the ongoing issues with track and field runner Caster Semenya.
Yes, absolutely right. Yeah, it's very similar. And and amazingly similar, but the sanctioning bodies decide how they want to categorize their participants by gender, depending on the definition they choose.
I think I may have lost connection with Gail. Okay, she's back. She's back. Go ahead.
Yeah. We have the first transgendered male boxer in the sport who is perfectly fine to compete as a man, who has spoken about it. I think everybody, just as I posted on myself on social media, at this point, folks, let's channel our inner Taylor Swift. Y'all need to calm down. The WBC is satisfied by their standards. They're the ones that sanctioned one of the belts. And VADA is satisfied. They've administered the test. She passed them. End of discussion, at least for this fight. Now, what's more interesting to me is what happens from here, right? Is Jimenez the next opponent for Claressa Shields? Well, Jimenez is chasing her. She's kind of running behind her in weight. Can she come down to 154? Would Shields come back up, say, to 160? Shields, I don't think, wants to come all the way back up to 168. Jimenez for those two super middleweight belts. I just don't think so. But Jimenez would love to do it. So we'll see what happens with her. At 5'11", can she come down to 154? She's a woman in her 30s. There are men that can do it. There are men that can't do it. We're going to have to see what happens. In the meantime, you have another possibility. Franchon Crews-Dezurn was Claressa Shields' very first professional opponent. And she won several rounds of their 4-round fight on cards. She put up an excellent fight. In fact, after the first 2 rounds, Franchon Crews was ahead on 2 of those 3 cards. Shields ended up winning the fight. So would a rematch there make some sense? I think it might. Would a rematch in this fight make some sense? That might be a good way to go too. There are options here. Here's what's really interesting. Right now, the women with the big titles, the big names, aren't quite ready for Shields. Shields and John David Jackson and her team have talked talked very openly about the option of Shields giving MMA a try. That's a very interesting proposition. And I normally don't like that, but I do like that. I would like to see something like that. And there's discussion of Shields going up against somebody like Amanda Nunes, and they do a pair of fights. One's in the octagon, one's in the boxing ring. One's on her turf, one's on the other gal's turf. Wouldn't that be interesting? And wouldn't that be a big money draw fight? Good for both of them. I think we're going to see that happen. I don't know if we'll see it happen before the end of the year, both fights, but I think we'll know whether it's going to come together before this year is over. So stay tuned.
I'm going to give a shout out to Darkness Has Fallen, who's joined us in the live chat. Chat Ross has also joined us in the live YouTube chat. Thanks for your commentaries. Darkness Has Fallen said Cruz had to fight Jimenez because it was a mandatory. Otherwise, she would have been stripped. Darkness Is Up Fallen also said Jimenez answered those questions on the Boxing Voice about her gender. For me, I'm biased, I'll admit. I want Shields to fight the lady who beat her in the amateurs, or fight Raquel Miller, who has an interim belt at 154 pounds. Meanwhile, I wouldn't mind seeing Jimenez fight either a rematch against Franchon Cruz, or put all the belts on the line, fight undisputed unified champions against Cederroos at 168. We got to see Cederroos against Alicia Napoleon-Espinosa. She looked very good. I would think fans who saw her on the Shields Habazin undercard, they would like to see her in the ring again. Jimenez, good and bad reasons, is getting a whole lot of discussion about her in the aftermath of her win over Crews-Dezurn. Why not put those ladies, set up a fight between those two ladies at 168 pounds for all the belts on the line, place it here in the States, in the Southwest. I would guess if the money was right, Cederroos would do it. Put it on the Zone, put it on Showtime, wherever. Why not go that option?
Well, if you believe Cederroos, she said she wasn't ready for Shields. I'm not sure she'd feel like she was ready for Jimenez. Down the line, though, I like it. I'd love to see a women's version of a World Boxing Super Series tournament, even if it had to be abbreviated. You know, maybe you could really get 8 women at the top talent level as professionals, but you could
I think Gail went out on us. So I'll go. Yeah, Gail, you went out on us for a second, Gail. Could you repeat what you just said?
Yeah, I'll tell you what I would love to see at some point. I don't think you could get 8 competitors, but I think you could easily get 4. Let's get ourselves a women's edition of the World Boxing Super Series. And if you had to put it as an undercard on another World Boxing Super Series male division, in tandem, heck, so be it. I'd love to see that done.
Question here in the chat before we go into the news and start previewing some fights here. DS Kennels 210, he said that his comment was, I don't think Dana will allow his top female star getting into a boxing ring. Same when Anderson Silva wanted a boxing match with Roy Jones. Your response to that comment, Gail?
Well, yeah, I don't think you're wrong about what Dana White down in his deep heart would feel like, but sometimes these stars, even in UFC, get big enough that they've got some say in the matter. I mean, look at Conor McGregor. And I think Dana would find it more palatable if the pair of contests started in the octagon first, right? And if Nunes beats Shields there, I think he'd be a little less worried if they then turn around and stage a boxing match. And, you know, what is the truth between MMA or all MMA, including the UFC and boxing, is that all of the competitors know the big money is in boxing. It's not in the UFC. That's why Conor McGregor jumped ship. And he proved it could be done. So at some point, Nunes is going to say, listen, I want to make a decent paycheck. And if you're not wanting to pay me that kind of money, let me go over and have a boxing match. Schedule it so that it doesn't bust up my career. And, you know, losses just do not signify the same sort of disaster in MMA as boxing, which I think is inherently healthy.
Shout out to Ivan DC20 who says in the YouTube chat, money talks. Money talks, Dana White. Money talks. Indeed, I agree with that. Let me say for everybody, for everybody on the live YouTube chat, make sure to hit that like button while you're listening to the show. And if you hadn't subscribed, make sure you hit that subscribe button on YouTube as well. Let's move to some news here. One bit of main news I want to focus on, and I like when fighters make the necessary moves to shoot for greatness. Wait a minute. Chat Ross, I read your question. My apologies. I don't know what Colin Atwell said about Jimenez in Facebook. I will look that up, and in the post fight, once the show is over with, I will in the comment section, I will respond to that. But back to the news. I like when fighters make moves to try to push for true greatness. Josh Taylor, who's coming off his World Boxing Super Series win over Regis Progress to unify the IBF and WBA titles at 140 pounds. In my opinion, Gail, he's making a move for greatness. And what I mean by that is he has signed a deal with ESPN Top Rank. He's talked in discussing this move to the disappointment of Cyclone Promotions and Barry McGuigan, who still says, for the record, that Taylor is under contract with him. Taylor has said he's doing this because he feels that he can get the big fights in the U.S. Why do I say he's searching for greatness? Because Taylor wants a fight with WBC, WBO champion Jose Ramirez for all the belts at 140 pounds. And I think that should he get that fight with Ramirez and win, I think he ultimately wants a crack at one Bud Crawford. Your reaction to what Taylor did is something that I cannot applaud enough. I love it.
You took my 3-word comment away from me. I love it. I love it. It was the smart move. He removed any barriers to matchmaking. He's got some 140 opportunities that he could tidy up if he so chooses. He's got one Jose Carlos Ramirez over there. He's got one Regis Prograis. Should he want to tangle again? Maybe not. He did say he'd give him a rematch, by the way, but that he is in position to provide competition either at 140 or at 147. And he just teed himself up a darn big fight, and maybe it's not Crawford. It could be against Manny Pacquiao for that matter. So it Now, I
I
will
think Gail
add
went.
that,
Yeah, you went out on
yeah,
us again, Gail. So could you repeat what you just said?
yeah, I just, in essence, I couldn't be more delighted. It's the smart move. It gives them options at both 140 and 147, not just with Crawford, but potentially with Manny Pacquiao. So it's a brilliant thing to do. He, yeah, he is rumored to have some contractual issues with his previous promoter to sort out. But I have a hard time thinking Top Rank wouldn't have scrubbed that pretty carefully before making this big announcement. So I think any noise about, no, he's still under contract, no, he couldn't sign, I think that will fade away.
Yeah, again, when you want to shoot for the gold, I like when fighters take a chance, bank on themselves, and that's what Taylor's doing. I wish more fighters would do the same.
Too many,
If they
too
see
many
the
play it
opposite,
safe. They're
yeah,
so worried about that. Oh, again, a theme we sounded earlier in this podcast. Guys and women that are so worried about a loss on their record. A loss is not fatal. In fact, a loss can benefit you if you learn from it and improve. And many fighters do. And it's not a loss that lessens your appeal in the ring. It's playing it too safe. It's being boring. It's fighting people beneath your skill level. That's what makes you lesser in the ring, not a loss on your record. Fans do not give a shit. They don't. They want to see talent fighting talent. That's it.
yeah. And if you see the opportunity, if you're in a position where you see a lot of the business happening with another network, in short, if another network, if another entity, they have a foothold on a division, they have most of the champions there. If you have the opportunity to go to that network or align yourself with that network to get the big names, to get the big money, and to get the titles, why not do it? And that's what Taylor's doing.
Well, and
And
if your
again,
promoter will not
I couldn't be happier.
And if your promoter is too concerned about matching you tough and you want fights and your promoter won't go with it, won't play along and make you those fights, you're going to have to kick him to the curb. Now, in the chat, we have our pal Gus, corruption in boxing, also pointing out that there are tax advantages, there are financial advantages to Josh Taylor signing with Top Rank. Who is based in Nevada. I am assuming if he establishes residency out of Nevada, he's going to have a lot less tax liability. There's no state sales tax there, thanks to gambling. So that's a smart move as well for him.
Indeed. So okay, I can't. I have to reiterate. This is a very smart, shrewd move on the part of Taylor. Just like the discussion I was having with Gus publicly in the chat when it came to Tanaka and the situation with the WBO. This is using your brain, not just inside of the ring, but using your brain outside of the ring. And shout out to Josh Taylor for making such a bold move. Let's any other news you want to talk about or bring up real quickly before we start previewing some fights and possibly and try to get an early shutdown on the show, Gail?
The only other big news of the week was the one and only pre-fight meeting between Deontay Wilder and Tyson Fury. Many of us in the boxing media covered this event in Los Angeles earlier in the week. I will not talk about it at length here, other than to mention there was a lot of comments worth looking up. Tyson Fury graced us with a few songs and a few absolutely outrageous comments, which you could easily find on social media, including mine at PR Pro San Diego. Deontay Wilder, on the other hand, was extremely calm, self-possessed, self-assured, and in some comments having to do with social issues, race, respect, he was incredibly thoughtful. and very serious about it. I recommend that you go out and look for those. That is their
Yeah, I think you kind of went out on us again, Gail, but I got the gist of what you were trying to say. You may have some technical issues on your end. Let's get
yeah,
to preview.
I'm having some transmission issues tonight, so let's get to those
So let's
previews
get to
now.
let's get to the previews of these fights. Let's start off with um, Elieder Alvarez. He's returning to the ring following his loss to Sergey Kovalev almost a year ago. He lost his WBO light heavyweight belt to Kovalev in the rematch early February of last year. He's returning to the ring to fight Michael Seals, fighting tomorrow in Verona, New York. Correct me if I'm wrong. Um, Two old guys here, I have to say here, Gail. Fight's going to be taking place on ESPN. Problem is, the thing is for me that, Alvarez, who's 35, he's fought the higher caliber of competition. Seals, who's 37, has fought the more limited competition. And I think experience, that experience factor will be the difference here. Your thoughts on this fight, Gail? Yeah, I think she went out on us again. But yeah, I'll just say until we can get her back.
And I am
The
back,
experience.
I hope.
Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Experience is going to be the factor here, I think. I'm hoping for a wildly entertaining fight, but yeah, Seals this is really his last stand. He's 37 years old. He's been lucky enough to have a couple of really eye-catching knockouts in his recent fights, but he needs to fight smarter and harder than that against somebody as crafty as Alvarez. And Alvarez can make it a technical fight.
I see Champ Ross is here saying in the chat that he has Alvarez by KO. I'll say decision, Champ. I'll go with that. Interesting comment from here going back to the Josh Taylor fight. I kind of agree with this. He's from Corruption in Boxing. He says Subriel Matias is, however, now being promoted by Top Rank. Josh Taylor needs to avoid him like a disease or hurry back to Scotland feasting on deep fried Mars bars. Oh, that's a funny comment. I don't think they're going to put him in there. I know. I have to see whom. No, Matias is not the mandatory. So, given that factor alone, I don't think that fight will happen, Gus. I think that Erin is going to. Well, first of all, Taylor has to fight the mandatory. Next, that's going to be his next fight of mandatory defense. His name, the guy who his mandatory escapes me right now. But Matias, I've seen him fight. He's an intriguing prospect at 140 pounds. From the video I've seen of him, I like him a lot. He can really fight. But given that this is about money, this is about big fight. Aram, outside that mandatory that Taylor has to fight, he's going to protect Taylor as best as he can in order to get that fight with Ramirez, because that is the fight at 140 pounds. That's the only reason that Taylor went to ESPN Top Rank, is to get that fight.
And I am back, Michael.
If you're back, yeah, I hear you. Go back.
Yeah, I don't know. Let's go ahead and go forward. I know I agree with you on this Alvarez Seals fight. I mean, this is Seals' last stand, but I think this is too big a hill for him to climb.
Let's move on to some other fights. Quick word on on the return of one Felix Verdejo, who's fighting on the undercard.
Ugh. You know, he has a little bit of something in common with Jesse Hart, potential unrealized. You know, he had a good run at the 2012 Olympics. If you all recall, he lost in the quarterfinals, but he lost to Vasily Lomachenko, and it was not a beatdown. He burst out of there. He got signed by Top Rank. Uncle Bob loves Olympians, loves them. And he did really well as a prospect. He was looking like the, next great Puerto Rican fighter. And then, like a plane heading, too far vertical, he just flat out stalled. And he's just never gotten it back. So here we are again, trying to resurrect Felix Verdejo's career again. And, I'm kind of over it. I'm just kind of over it.
In Philadelphia, also taking place tomorrow night. Well, let me just say January 18th. Julian Williams, who had one of the fights of the year, and winning the junior middleweight titles, over winning the WBA and IBF junior middleweight titles over Jared Hurd, makes his first fight in the ring, and after that, fighting Dominican fighter by the name of Rosario. I don't know much about Rosario. I hadn't seen much of him on film, but I do know he lost to Nathaniel Gallimore, who knocked him out in the 6 rounds, put him down 3 times in that fight. Also lost to Jorge Cota. Give me a reason to believe that Rosario has any kind of chance here. Based on the film I've seen of him, based on his record, Julian Williams, who should be on a real high following the win over Hurd Gail, he should just be just too much for him. This is a showcase fight for Williams, in my opinion, in his hometown. The only way he will lose is if all of a sudden he just has a loss of focus.
Oh, or he could trip and dislocate a knee or pull an Achilles tendon, or weird stuff does happen in the ring. But come on, folks, give Rosario credit. He is dropping from middleweight to take this fight. Bravo to him for having the guts to do it. I salute the man. But let's be realistic. Rosario is there. The match was made primarily to make Williams look good in his homecoming fight in front of his family and friends and hometown fans. This is Williams' first fight back in Philadelphia since 2011. 2011. I'm not sure how that happened. So this is, this is a homecoming party for him. Rosario is young.
Rosario is young, but he just doesn't have the experience or the talent, in my opinion, in our opinion, to just hang with the likes of a Julian Williams, who, yeah, people will say he has his faults, and people will still have that Charlo bout lingering in their brains when talking about J Rock. But he should just be just too much for Rosario. I forgot to talk about one fight during our recap, Gail. A quick word on Jaime Munguia's win, his 11th round stoppage win over Spike O'Sullivan.
Yeah, that was an interesting fight because let's remember what we've recently seen of Gary O'Sullivan, including a absolute blast out knockout loss at the hands of David Lemieux. I mean, he got flattened by Lemieux. So here he is back in the ring with Munguia. And the first few rounds, Munguia looked
Yeah, shout out to Olaf. Shout out to Intangible Boxing. The reason, some small technical issues on Gail's end. I
Oh, here
apologize
I am
for that.
still. Got me here?
Go ahead, you're back. Uh-huh.
I
I
am
hear you.
back. The beginning of that fight, dare I say this, with the head movement, the body movement, the position in the ring, but then it devolved into a brawl. You know,
Yeah, she went out on us again. Read some comments here in the chat before we come back. Intangible Boxing, again, shout out. Thanks for joining us on the show. He says Verdeo hadn't been the same since he crashed his motorcycle. Um, Lisa says, I agree. The intangible about the accident. He was highly touted too. Gus says about the fight between Rosario and J Rock. He says Rosario is tall and quite a decent boxer, but he lacks power. Um, Intangible boxing, when we talked about in response to Gus's comment about Mateus, he says, yeah, I forgot about him. He's the dude that caught a body last year. Yeah, he sure did. Until we get to Big Gail back, let's move on to an intriguing fight on the undercard of J Rock and Rosario. Fight I like a lot. Chris Colbert fighting Jezreel Corrales. Corrales, a former champion at 130 pounds, I believe. They're fighting for a vacant interim WBA title. Disregard that, because you know how the WBA do when it comes to their titles and interim titles and super titles and gold, diamond, and the rest of that BS. The bottom line for me is I've seen Colbert in the ring. I like him a lot as a fighter. I'm going with him. I think he's the favorite. Corrales is a former champion. He's a slick, tricky dude, but I like the composure that Colbert has in the ring. I think he has sneaky power. I think he has real solid skill. He's the younger fighter at 23, and I think he's on the roll. I love the way his last two bouts against Mercado, 8th round decision win. I like how he looked in that fight. The way he blasted out Beltran in his last outing, September of last year. Um, when it comes to Jezreel Corrales, is he's a funky little guy, funky little southpaw. I don't trust his chin. I've seen him hurt too many times. Uh, he got stopped by Machado. He has sneaky power. He can do some some things that could frustrate Colbert, but I don't know if he's fighting with the same confidence that he has post the Machado fight that he showed the fight with up until the Machado fight. If you're back, Gail, your comments about this fight between Chris Colbert and Machado. Is this the right fight for Colbert? The right fight at the right time for Colbert to really show how good he is?
I do think so. I think he knows he's got an opponent he can really manhandle. He's one of those guys that wants to prove he's the the baddest, the fastest, the most powerful. He's a big talker outside the ring, and this gives him a chance to back it up. His opponent can be surprisingly good, but he's really erratic, and Colbert should just have too many skills to get much of a challenge.
Now, I see your comment about Jaime Munguia. Lisa, she says that Munguia's power hasn't moved up with him yet. I did notice some subtle adjustments, though. I question that, Lisa, because of the level of opponent. His last two opponents, Alade, that was a non-test. Spike O'Sullivan, he won, and he did some good things in there, Lisa, but he also got hurt in that fight. The deficiencies on defense showed their ugly head in spots during that fight. And if he's talking about wanting to fight the best at 160 pounds, meaning Canelo, Golovkin, Andrade, uh, Maul, Charlo. I still see him as the prohibitive underdog. Um, no way, no way he beats any of those guys at this point. Um,
And if you hear me and I'm back, I agree with
uh-huh.
you. I agree with you.
Yeah, I can't
Yeah.
get the fights with Takeshi Inui. I can't get the fight with Dennis Hogan out of my head. Um,
Right.
he got hit a lot in those bouts.
Well,
And
and
these
look what,
past two bouts with Alade and Sullivan, yeah, he won. Yeah, he was pretty dominant, but I got nothing from him. Nothing. And any other comments I'm looking for in the chat? Okay, Lisa says you agree, but yeah, if you're back, Gail, your copy. What was you going to say about Munguia? I think she has still having some technical issues on her end. I think we're going to start to shut the show down on that note. I want to thank everybody who joined us in the live chat. Want to give a shout out to Lisa. Want to give a shout out to DS Kennels 210. Want to give a shout out to Gus from Corruption and Boxing, Intangible Boxing, Uh, Olaf the Mighty. Who else? Who else? Who else? Who else? There was some other ones. Sean Fitzgerald,
DSK,
Champ Ross,
Gus,
DSK,
and the back.
Ivan, DC 210.
Just in
A
time.
lot of folks here. Darkness has fallen. I want to thank you all for your comments and your question, your comments and your questions. I'm going to you, Gail. For those who want to talk the sweet science, for those who want to talk media, small business, let the folks know where they can hit you up. Again, she's dipped out, so I'll get the information for us if you want to check her out.
I'm still here.
Go ahead.
All right. Did you you're gonna have to repeat your question. I know you gave me a great run
For
up there.
those who want to talk the sweet science, for those who want to talk media training, small business advice, let the folks know where they can find you.
GDIGInews.com. And I'm on the interwebs at PR Pro San Diego.
As I said at the beginning of the show, if you want to find out all information regarding Pound for Pound Boxing Report, the blog page is the place to go to, p4pboxingreport.wordpress.com. Check the top right of the blog page. You can find links to where to find us on social media, where to find us on RSS feeds, on platforms that carry RSS feed, minus SoundClouds, because for the time being, I'm not going to say it on a permanent basis, but for the time being, I'm going to stay off SoundCloud. I'm moving to another format. If you want to talk boxing, music, fitness with me on social media, you know what it is on Twitter, Brother JR at Brother JR76. Also on the blog page, a link to where you can donate. So I know it's tax season. Hint, hint, nod, nod. If you have a little spare change and you want to donate Pound for Pound Box Report to help us improve with the show, including the technical glitches that have been going on throughout the show this evening.
Yeah, you want to better? No, don't send it to the IRS. Send it to the Pound for Pound Report, for God's sake. Jeez.
We do have a Cash Me and a PayPal donation link, and also if you into anything fitness wise, and into resolutions and all that one, get yourself, your body and your mind right. Check out my the link to my online coaching page. I am an online coach for beachbody.com. Do regular fitness challenges every month, minus this month, because again, I was a little bit under the weather. I hope, fingers crossed, to get Gail involved in 2020. So yeah, check out my online fitness coaching link. On the next episode, we will do a recap of J Rock and his fight against Rosario, Colbert, and Corrales. Do a recap of Storm Alvarez fighting Michael Seals. We will also do a preview of Danny Garcia, he's fighting Ivan Redcats. He's going to fight at Barclays. I believe that fight is going to take place on Showtime. On the undercard of that, I believe Jared Hurd, he's fighting. So yeah, we will talk about those. We will talk about those fights to be specific. So yeah, for Gail from Communities Digital News, I am your host Michael. Again, I want to thank everybody who joined us in the live chat, live YouTube chat. This has been episode 277 of Pound for Pound Box Report. We will see you guys next time. Everyone have a good evening and good night. If you're checking us out on iTunes and on Spotify and Google Podcasts or whatever, you hadn't seen episodes lately, but I will have this episode up this weekend for sure. So be on the lookout for that. Again, hope everybody is having a good year. Hope everybody had a good holidays. Good evening. Good night.